Hi, and in this video I'm going to talk through Hekili. This is a rotation add-on that is built primarily for Enhancement Shamans, with the author being a totem chucker themselves, and Retribution Paladins. However, it has been designed for other classes in the past and possibly could be again. The add-on is essentially like an easily customizable set of weak auras. It allows you to track and sequence rotational DPS abilities without taking up lots of space on your UI. The add-on uses the Action Priority List, or APL, from Simulation Craft, and so is up to date with the thinking of top theory crafters for the specs in question. That being said, you will still need to take into account circumstances that the add-on can't possibly account for when deciding how to follow it. It's not a bot, which would be against the terms and conditions of the game. It's simply a display of your abilities sequenced according to priority and when they will be available for use. Sometimes you might have a situation where one ability is used in a single target situation and another for cleave or AoE situations. Remember that there are times when you have the option to cleave, but you still need to single target. For example, you have a priority ad surrounded by others that don't need to die quickly or even at all. For example, the tentacles in the last phase on Xavius. Just be aware of your own priorities for your spec and use the correct one for the situation. For example, as Retribution, there are times when Hekili advises me to use Divine Storm and I'll use Templar's Verdict instead. You can download this add-on from Curse using the link in the description below. To access the settings, you should type /Hekili. So when you've loaded Hekili in, you'll be presented with a series of icons, 2 rows of 4 icons in all likelihood. Now, to access the settings, we need to type in /Hekili. And there's a series of things. Let me go right to the top. You'll first of all be presented with the welcome tab. So this just has some basic information, so we can ignore that for now. Now in the general tab, first of all, obviously the add-on is enabled, so we could untick that and it'll disable it if we just want to quickly get rid of it. Locked, this allows us, at the moment it's unticked, to move the bars around where we want, which is fairly handy. But obviously we don't want them to be able to draggable like this in combat because we might accidentally drag them somewhere pretty awful. So we would, when we're finished changing everything, click locked here, but for now that's fine. Now in terms of these 3 bars, so Clash, this is a way of dealing with our natural reaction time and latency. Now, as I've already said, Hekili tries to set up a sequence for your next few abilities based on priority and when these abilities are going to become available. Now it might well be that the 3rd ability in the list is not off cooldown yet, but it will be in 2 global cooldowns when you get there. But sometimes the add-on will determine that it still won't be available in 2 global cooldowns, but you know, because of either your own natural reactions, you might actually be using your abilities more slowly than the add-on assumes because your natural human reactions are a little bit slower, or because of the latency of your game you might be working a little bit more slowly. So you might want to install a clash, you might want to put a number on here. Now this is a personal number, there is no number that is good. You have to try it out yourself. So the best way is to try it out on a training dummy, do lots and lots of practice on a training dummy. If you're finding that it's telling you abilities are not off cooldown, but you sort of know by the time you get to that point they are, then you should put a clash value a bit higher. If, however, you find yourself waiting around for an ability to come off cooldown that it thinks should be off cooldown by then maybe you reduce the clash. So it's just a case of adjusting it until it feels right. The grace period bar here is related to counting mobs for AoE. As I've already said, I would strongly advise against taking responsibility for that yourself, so I'm not going to worry about this. Engine settings, this is super important, the updates per second. Now, for this, if you have a low value, what it means is it might well not take advantage of the fact that a very high priority ability is going to be available earlier rather than later, and therefore might not suggest it in time. The reason for that is you can have things like procs or something might come off cooldown a little bit quicker, and because it's not looking at the situation as often, then it gives you a suboptimal advice. So what you want to do is to increase this. The higher the updates per second, the more times it's checking what's going on, the more likely it is to give you good advice. However, increasing the updates per second puts extra demand on your computer. And if your hardware's not up to it, then you'll find the game slowing down a lot, and that will actually overall reduce your DPS. So what you need to do is to put it as higher value as your game can, or your computer, sorry, can cope with without the game slowing down. You don't want the game slowing down at all. Now to test this, it's no good just putting a number in and trying it out on a training dummy. You need to be in a raid environment. So what I would suggest is go into LFR with a particular setting, put it on reasonably high. If your computer can deal with it really easily, then I would increase it a bit further. If it can't, so it's clearly slowing down, even if it's only a little bit, reduce it and keep adjusting it accordingly. Now in the next tab, toggles, we have a number of things here. All of these are unticked for me. I'll start with the bottom three first of all. Cooldowns, potions and interrupts. I would strongly advise that none of these are ticked. We don't want cooldowns showing because we don't always use our cooldowns as soon as they're available. We use them at optimal times during the fight. So we don't want that ticked. Potions, the same thing. We don't always use our potions as soon as they're available. So we don't want that ticked. Interrupts. It's nice to be told when an ability is interruptible. However, often in group PvE we have interrupt rotations, or we have a priority system. It might be that some casts you can let go through, but there are really important casts that you must interrupt. So because we're not always going to interrupt us just because we can, we don't really want the add-on trying to tell us to interrupt either. So make sure all of these are unticked, or that is my advice anyway. In terms of the mode switch, I was talking about taking responsibility for the difference between single target and AoE, particularly in an AoE situation where you've still got to focus single target. You can force the mode here, these drop down menus. This current mode, you can switch to single target and it will just sort of force that rather than automatically do it. Let's click off that, I'll tell you what that is in a moment. Similarly, you can do between auto and manual here to be able to hard switch yourself, whether you want the add-on to determine whether you're in a single target cleave or AoE situation, or you want to do that yourself. Now I keep clicking that on by accident. I'll tell you what this is. If we go back to the general tab, we have a thing called debug here. This is if you actually wanted to help out the author, and or you found a bug in it and you wanted to present the sort of the bug report effectively to pass on to the author so that they can investigate what the problem is. However, even I don't feel up to that, and I'm not going to suggest it for you guys either, so don't have that ticked. And this would be just to create a pause button so you can pause the add-on when it appears to be the bug appears to be carried out, and you can sort of report those lines of text. So we'll leave that as well, we don't need that. Class settings, there are some abilities that, although are part of our rotation, you don't necessarily want to be included as part of your rotation. You want to use it as and when. If that was the case, you can tick it off here. So Doom Winds for Enhancement Shamans and Wake of Ashes for Retribution Paladins. Notifications, if when you change modes or anything like that, you want a notification telling you this, or have used a cooldown, for example, if you've got the cooldowns clicked, then you can have this showing. I don't have that, so I'm not having my notification showing. Displays. So we've got two options here, the Enhancement Primary and the Enhancement AoE. Now, first of all, visibility. At the moment I've got them on Show Always, just so I can show you this. In reality, we don't want them always shown. We don't need them when we're just running around. So I click on Show with Target, Show in Combat. And I would do the same for PvP. It's up to you though, it's your preference. Now if I just close that down, what I can see is that particular bar has gone away. This one remains because I haven't done anything to it. So if I do that on the primary as well, then that too will disappear. But when I get a target, back they come. Or if I was in combat, without a target even, back they come. Now I'm just going to click on that so I can always see it. Now I don't want two bars either. I don't want separate ones for single target and AoE. So I'm actually going to not enable the AoE version. So if I close that, I've now just got the primary one, which I can move to somewhere more suitable. Now when it comes to setting up the bar itself, I prefer first of all to have 3 icons, and I prefer the primary icon, that is the next ability to use, or the one that you should be using right now, to be a little bit larger. Now we can change the size and the number by, for the particular bar we're interested in, clicking on UI and Style. So I'm going to change that down to 3, because what I need to, I want to see the ability to use now and the next 2 in the queue. That's enough for me, for a Retribution Paladin at least, where we don't have as many abilities as, say, an Enhancement Shaman, where of course it might be more suitable to have 4, for me to be able to make informed decisions should I want to break with the advice from the add-on itself. Now in terms of the primary icon size, you can see primary icon size, queue icon size are both the same on 40 by default. Now I focus first of all on the queued icon size. I don't want it to be too big. The whole reason I use Hekili is to try and save space. So I want it a little bit smaller, but it can't be too small that I can't see it. So I'm just going to try it on 25 just for now. I'm going to close that and see how that is. Now for me that's fine. The primary icon is a little larger. These are large enough still to see. So I'm going to use that. I would do it by the queued size first. The reason is if you make it too small, then you can't see it, or you can't distinguish between 2 similar looking icons, then that's no good to you. So base it around the queued size and then just make the primary size a little bit bigger. But for me, on my monitor, this is working fine. So 40 size for the primary and 25 for the 2 queued ones. Now the action lists we don't have to concern ourselves with, because these are set by default from the Simulation Craft APL, as I've already explained. If you were into modifying those APLs yourself, let's say you thought you had a better system, then you are able to modify it in here. But as that's a more advanced feature, we're not going to worry about it at all. Now, one interesting point is that in the profile section, you can copy from existing profiles. So if you've had it set up on one character and you've got another character for which Hekili works, you can copy it directly from that. Now, when it comes to using this for the Enhancement Shaman, I can't really offer any class-specific advice, as I don't know anything about them for Legion. However, a word of warning when using this for Retribution Paladins. You do get a small error when entering combat with Holy Power already built up, in that the add-on doesn't seem to account for this. It will tell you to use Wake of Ashes even if you have lots of Holy Power already. If it does that, don't do it. Remember, you're responsible for monitoring your own Holy Power and deciding if it's sensible to use Wake of Ashes at that time. In this situation, begin with Judgment and a Spender first, and then act on the add-on suggestions. It's more common on Trash and in dungeons than raid bosses, where the delay before pulling is usually great enough for your Holy Power to fade anyway. And when you've got no Holy Power, it's absolutely fine. You can start with Wake of Ashes. Always remember that you are responsible for the execution of your rotation. This add-on is a graphical aid only. So as always, I hope you found this useful, and don't forget to check out the other add-ons I use in the add-ons playlist linked in the card in the top right. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share if you'd like to see further content. Until next time, I'll see you later.